Welcome to Gospel Truth with Andrew Womack, a teaching ministry that focuses on God's unconditional love and grace. And now, Andrew continues teaching from the life-changing Word of God about excellence.
Welcome to our Tuesday's broadcast of the Gospel Truth. Today, I'm continuing a series that I started yesterday talking about excellence. Excellence in your spirit, in your attitude. And I just happen to have a brand new book on this. It's the very first time we've offered this, and I tell you, this is powerful. Yesterday, I began to introduce this subject. Let me go back to Daniel chapter 6, verse 3. And this says, "Then was Daniel preferred above the presidents and princes because an excellent spirit was in him." Did you know everybody would like to be preferred? Everybody would like to see God promote them. Everybody would like all of these great results that Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had. Everybody would like these results, but not everybody is willing to do what they did to get it. Now, we don't earn the blessing of God. None of us are ever going to be perfect, and please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you've got to dot every I and cross every T and you got to be this perfect person. But I am saying that there are attitudes, or what I'm calling here excellence, an excellent spirit that draws the favor of God, that causes God to promote you. You know, let me make this comparison. We've got like 650 employees, about 500 here in the States and 150 or so around the world. And you know what? I try and treat all of my employees well. I go by and I say things to them. And there's times that, employees don't do what's right. There's times that we've had to fire some people, let some people go and do things like this. But I try and be gracious and kind to all of my employees, and I don't treat them badly. But I can guarantee you, when it comes time to promote a person, you don't take a person that is a griper and a complainer and a person who just, barely gets by, and they are here only for the paycheck, but they have no desire to really help the ministry prosper. They're just thinking about themselves. You give them a 10-minute break. They're going to take a 15-minute break. They're going to come in late. They're going to check out early. You observe things like that. And when it comes time for a promotion, you don't promote a bad spirit. You don't promote a person who isn't diligent, doesn't have a good work ethic. You don't promote those things. If you do, well, then what that does, that causes everybody under them to be similar to that. What you do, you look for people that have this excellence in everything that they do, that they work hard, they have a good attitude. They are here trying to build everybody up. When they come, people get encouraged by them. I'm sure that every one of you know what I'm talking about. There are some people that when you ask them, "How are you?" you're sorry that you asked. Because, man, it's just like they throw up on you and they tell you every hurt and every pain and every rejection that they felt, and they just gripe and complain. But then there's other people that when you see them, man, they are just encouragers. They build people up. They inspire other people to do better. See, those are traits of an excellent spirit. And when you have that, I'm telling you from an employer standpoint, that you promote excellence. You do not promote a bad attitude. I actually was walking through my office one time, and in the IT department, they had an interview with a young guy who came in. And this young guy came in wearing flip-flops, and he had pants with holes in them. And I'm aware that that's a new style and that I'm an old school and all of this. But this guy had on a t-shirt that was sloppy. He was not clean. He smelled. He hadn't combed his hair. He hadn't shaved. Everything about him said loser. Now, again, some people are saying you shouldn't judge a person by the way they look. But I'm saying if you come for a job interview, and if that's the way that you look applying for a job, what's going to happen if you get it? Man, if that's your best standard, if you're putting forth your best foot forward, and if that's your best, what's it going to be like once a person gets hired? And anyway, I said hi to this guy, and I didn't say anything at that moment, but later I walked by, I asked the person who was over that department, I said, "What was he doing here?" And he said, "Oh, he came for a job interview." And I said, "You know what? I don't care what his qualifications are. We do not need people like that in this ministry that don't care anything about the way they look, about they present themselves. And I know that there's people, this is politically incorrect, what I'm saying. And there are people that will be judgmental. There's probably people who are upset with me right now saying, well, I thought you were a grace preacher, and here you are judging people and condemning them. I'm not condemning him. I love this guy. Man, I would help him if he was in trouble. I'll help him, but I'm not going to give him a job, and I'm not going to promote him, and I'm not going to try and encourage my other employees to live down to his standard. And some of you, well, I just think you're wrong. Well, let me suggest that that's the reason you don't prosper. That's the reason you aren't promoted. And I can just hear television sets all over the world clicking off or changing to another channel because this is offensive. And most people, this is not a popular attitude, but let me say that the people that have that attitude of just do enough to barely get by, you work only to get money, but you live to play and to do other things, but you don't have a purpose, you aren't excelling, you aren't helping your boss, you are just a drain on them. You feel like they owe you everything and they should be giving you more without you doing any more. And people with that kind of attitude do not excel. I'm telling you, there is a reason that people are promoted. There is a reason that God can lift other people up. And it's not that you earn it, but you do have to receive God's favor. You do have to have an excellent spirit. It says in Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Your heart is reflected in your life, in the way you act, the way you talk, the things that you do. I can be around a person for a very short period of time and I can tell you volumes about them because out of the mouth proceed the issues of life, is what the Lord said. And a person who is just griping and complaining and talking about everybody else and why don't they treat me better and we need to pass a law and the government needs to give me more money and it's all about what other people should be doing, but you aren't operating in excellence yourself. I can guarantee you that. I'm saying this in love, but that's a loser's attitude. And your attitude determines your altitude. And I know that there's people that don't like that. Again, this is politically incorrect in our world today where we say, no, if the government would just do this for me, and you're looking for other people and you're wanting to win the lottery and you're just wanting something out there to change, you don't realize that change begins with you. And I'm telling you, you get an excellent spirit. I'm still in the introduction, but when I get into this and I talk about Hananiah and Mishael and Azariah, who we know as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when you start studying them in Daniel, and I'm going to be going through the book of Daniel and showing you this, there are reasons why they were promoted. I mean, they all became rulers over a foreign land. They started out as slaves. They were castrated. They became eunuchs. They could have sat there and griped and complained. They could have just been miserable. They could have let things happen to them the way other people do. I bet you that the majority of the people who are sitting there saying it's unfair and I just cannot prosper because of the system, and you're looking at this and you see injustices around you and you are just bitter and angry and it's somebody else's fault. It's never your fault. The people who are thinking that way, I bet you haven't been castrated. I bet you hadn't been made a eunuch. I bet you that you weren't taken out of your homeland. And it doesn't say this, but Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it says that this happened when Nebuchadnezzar came in and conquered the people. And I mean, he killed hundreds of thousands of people. It is very possible that this very king who they served was responsible for killing their family. Certainly, there was some family or friends that Nebuchadnezzar killed. They could have been bitter towards him and they could have said, we aren't doing a thing that he asked us to do. They could have had a bad attitude. They probably were more justified in griping and complaining than any person watching this program. And yet I'm going to go through and show you that because they had an excellent spirit, they were just promoted and promoted and promoted. Daniel survived under 4 kings. He lasted for around 80 years in this corrupt foreign system where Nebuchadnezzar made an idol of gold and made people bow down and worship it, and Darius made a command that, nobody could pray to any god except him. If they did, they'd be thrown into the lion's den, and on and on. We're going to go and talk about all of this. But these people prospered not because they didn't have any problems, not because that they hadn't had bad things happen to them, but they had an excellent spirit. And I'm telling you, when you get your heart right, God will promote you. Let me read these verses to you out of Ephesians chapter 6. This same thing is said over in the book of Colossians, but in Ephesians chapter 6, it says in verse 5, servants, and the word servants here literally means slaves. He's talking about a slave and master situation. This is not God approving of the institution of slavery, but it did exist, and how do people function under it? He's given you instructions how a slave should obey their master. He says, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart as unto Christ, not with eye service as men pleasers, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, with good will doing service as to the Lord and not to man, knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, including even a slave, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. This goes right along with the verse that I used yesterday, Psalms chapter 75, verses 6 and 7, where it says promotion doesn't come from the east or from the west or from the south, but it's the Lord who's the judge, and He puts up one and sets down another. God is the one who promotes us, and this is talking to slaves. Now, we don't have that situation today, praise God, but you could make an application to employer and employee, and even to the bad employers, even if they aren't treating you right. It says, do service to them, not with eye service. You know what this is talking about? This is saying don't only work hard when the boss is there, but when the boss isn't around, you ought to be just as diligent. You ought to be serving the Lord Christ and not just your boss. You know, the guy who is the CEO of my ministry, Paul Milligan, he's got multiple corporations, thousands of employees. He's turned those over to his son and to his son-in-law, and he's now on the board of directors, and he runs my ministry for me. But the point is, he's had thousands of employees. He's dealt with corporations and all of these kind of things. And Paul and I have tried to share with our employees that even though we want to be a blessing to our employees, and we try and pay our employees good, we give them time off and PTO and health benefits, and we do a lot of different things. We're trying to get across that we are limited in what we can do, but God is unlimited. And if people would work as to the Lord and not to us, not just when we're around do they work hard, but man, if they would work hard and if they had this excellent spirit and did everything with excellence, just like Daniel, they would be promoted. It says Daniel was thought to be promoted over the whole realm because he had an excellent spirit. God was the one who promoted him. God is the one who raised him up. God will promote you. But if you look to your employer and you're sitting there and you are thinking that God cannot prosper you beyond that job, and you look at that job as your source, then if you run into any financial difficulties and stuff, you're going to have resentment and bitterness towards your boss, towards your job. But you need to be working like this is saying as to the Lord, not with eye service, just doing what is inspected. But even if people aren't looking, you need to be serving God with your whole heart. And again, Paul Milligan, the CEO of my ministry, has a great testimony about this. I'm not going to give the whole thing. Maybe later I will in this teaching. But he was under a boss who was treating him wrong, taking credit for his ideas, and he knew it, but rather than get bitter, rather than try and make his boss fail, he just said, I'm going to make this man the most prosperous man that this company's ever had. And he did that for years. And after a couple of years, the higher bosses came down and asked him some questions about, was this your idea? Did you actually make this contact? Did you get this business deal done? And when they asked him, he said yes. And they said, we knew that your boss was not smart enough to do this. We've been watching you. And they recognized his ability, and they wound up promoting him, getting rid of that other man who had stolen Paul's ideas, and they wound up promoting Paul, and it became a great learning situation for him and a stepping stone to him owning his own businesses and everything. And see, he served not as just to a man, but he was serving to the Lord, and because he had that excellent spirit, God promoted him. I tell you, I am speaking directly to people right here. Some of you may not even recognize it, but this is God that is speaking through me to you, and you have been complaining about this situation, about this person, praying that they would change, that all of this would change, and what needs to change is you. You need to get an excellent spirit. You need to start serving the Lord instead of serving people. And I tell you, when you do that, God will cause you to prosper. Man, I've got examples of this. You know, I've been in ministry the vast majority of my life, but I haven't always been in ministry. And I remember when I was pastoring a little church in Childress, Texas, that anyway, I ran into a financial bind. I actually had bought a house, and it was financed by the owner, and I didn't have the ability to pay him. But rather than dodge him, you know, part of an excellent spirit is that when you owe somebody, you go to them. And the best thing is to pay them, but if you don't have the money, at least don't avoid them. And the day that I owed my payment on that house, I went to this boss and I told him, I said, look, I am sorry, but I just don't have it, but I am not avoiding this. I am going to come up with it. I remember telling this guy that my wife's blood was worth $150 an ounce back in the 70s and 80s. She's got a rare blood type. And of course, I wasn't going to use my wife's blood to pay the payment, but I was just telling him that I said, look, we are going to guarantee you we will pay this. And this guy said, well, look, he owned a photography studio, and he said that I'll let you work it out. And at that time, one of the reasons that I had so much poverty in my life is because when I was called into the ministry, I thought I was sinning against God if I worked a secular job. And so when our ministry was very small and we were only ministering to a few people, I only had a small income, and that's the reason I had all of these financial problems. But when I came into this situation, I couldn't tell this man that, you know, I owed him money, and I couldn't tell him, well, I'm not going to work for you and pay this off in wages. I felt obligated to him. I'd given him my word I was going to pay him. So anyway, even though it was against the way I had been living the last few years, I just knew that I had to get this guy paid, and so I accepted this job. And I went in and started developing pictures. And it's a long story, but I remember the very first time he ever started trying to teach me how to develop pictures. He took this one shot. We had a machine, and you put the negative in there, and you made a shot, and then he printed the thing, and he ran it through the machine, and he brought it out into the light, and he had me look at it, and he says, what's wrong with this picture? And I said, nothing. I said, it looks great to me. And he says, there's too much magenta. I didn't even know what magenta was. And he started trying to teach me how to develop pictures properly. And I just didn't get it. And he was so busy. He was so far behind. He had the contract with the high school to print an 8x10, 2 5x7s, and 16 wallets for every student. And his person that developed pictures had quit. He was in a bind, and he needed me to do it. So he just gave me a little bit of training and then basically put me in the dark room and told me to do it on my own. And I didn't know what to do. But you know what? I had this excellent Spirit. I had the Holy Spirit, and I started praying in tongues, and I asked God to show me. And I started doing things that I couldn't have done on my own. Matter of fact, there was one time, I hadn't got time to explain this to you, but anyway, there was a thing that we had to print one wallet size picture on just one 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and we only put that one wallet picture on there because it was nearly impossible to put different pictures from different people. You would have to turn on the light, open the machine, take out the negative, put a new one in, and you had to put this in a box. Anyway, I don't know if this makes any sense to you, but it was hard to do. But I saw that we were wasting paper, and so I went ahead and I put 8 different wallet pictures on one 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And so I had it sitting out on a table waiting to dry, and I was in the dark room working, and this boss comes running in, and he says, "I can't believe you did this." And he says, "I have worked here for 26 years. There is only one time in 26 years that I've been able to do something like this." He says, "You couldn't do this again if your life depended on it." And I said, "Oh yeah?" And I took him into another room where I must have had like 8 tables with dozens and dozens of those pictures printed on there. And he just looked at it and shook his head and he says, "I don't know what you're doing," but he says, "Keep doing it." And did you know, in just about 3 or 4 weeks, I saved this man's business from going bankrupt. And because of it, he came and offered me 50% ownership in his business after just 3 or 4 weeks. And I mean, I didn't have to invest any money. If I would just work for him, he would give me 50% of his business. And this was back when I was poor. This was back when I was struggling. It was quite an offer, but that's not what the Lord told me to do. And I turned it down. And that's when the Lord sent me to Pritchett, Colorado, and I had to turn it down. But I'm saying that God promoted me because I had an excellent attitude, because I trusted God. I did more than what was asked of me. And I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. I'm saying it to verify what the Scripture says. There is a reason that people are promoted. And I've just got this attitude that, God has blessed me, and whatever I set my hand unto is blessed. It's going to prosper. I really believe that. I really believe that if something was to happen, and for whatever reason I was not in the ministry, I would go down to Walmart and I could get a job as a greeter, and I guarantee you I would be the best greeter they ever had. Because of that, somebody would see and promote me, and I would get a better job. If I went to work at McDonald's, it wouldn't be long until I'd be managing the McDonald's and then owning the McDonald's. And I just don't care what you do. I know that when you have this attitude and you are serving the Lord and not serving people, and you aren't doing it to eye service, when you do that, it attracts the power of God and it releases the favor of God. And I know some of you think I'm weird, but I think you're weird to have this as part of our inheritance. And as I go through this series, I'm going to show you that this is part of what you've received as a born-again Christian. You've got the Spirit of God on the inside of you. In your spirit, you've got love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance. You've got all of these things. And if you are a griper and a complainer and negative and discouraged, you aren't operating in what God has given you. If you were to get your heart right, and instead of praying for everybody else to change, instead of praying that you would win the lottery and that somehow or another, favor would just drop out of the sky, and if you would begin to recognize who you are and what you have and begin to operate in it, promotion would come just like it did for Daniel, because he had an excellent spirit. Man, that's powerful. I'm out of time, but tomorrow we're going to start getting into some more of this. I've got this new book entitled Excellence, and the subtitle is How to Pursue an Excellent Spirit. If you pursue it, you can get it. If you don't, you won't. Man, this is powerful. I've also got CDs and DVDs on this. If you'll listen, our announcer will give you information about how you can get this product. Please call or write today, and then join me again tomorrow as I continue the gospel truth.
Discover the blessings that accompany an excellent spirit when you get Andrew's teaching titled Excellence.
I'd like to encourage you to get my newest book, Excellence. The subtitle is How to Pursue an Excellent Spirit. And what this is basically a study of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from the book of Daniel. And I tell you, this is powerful. Everybody would like the promotion that they experienced, but they don't want to do what they did in order to get there. But Daniel chapter 6 verse 3 says that Daniel was promoted because he had an excellent spirit. This will help you to accomplish the same thing.
Make sure to get your copy of Andrew's brand new book titled Excellence when you contact us today. This series is also available in a CD album or in a DVD album made from our daily television broadcast. Excellence is also available for audio download absolutely free from our website. The first audio teaching in today's series is available for a gift of any amount when you write or call. We encourage everyone to give, but if you're simply unable to afford it, Andrew and his partners will provide this first CD free of charge. You can order resources or become a Grace Partner today through our website at awmi.net. While there, you can discover more product details and download many free resources. Or call our helpline Monday through Friday from 4:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Our helpline number is 719-635-1111. To write us, use the address on your screen. We appreciate your generosity and hope to hear from you today.
Attention Dallas-Fort Worth area. Andrew's coming to Texas, November 9th through the 11th.
You need to expect a harvest. You need to plan on a harvest. God said when you give, it'll be given back unto you.
Expect the miraculous, the power of God, the saving grace of Jesus Christ, and the love of God being poured out.
The Holy Spirit will take what you have and who you are in the Spirit, and it will reproduce itself in your physical life and in your actions.
Register online to receive a free gift at the event. Secure your spot for the Texas Gospel Truth Seminar by registering today at awmi.net/events.
Childress Hybrid is a unique blend of independent study and face-to-face time with instructors and with other students who are determined to go deeper with God. You'll study courses at home, but then join your fellow classmates in person.
I love the new hybrid program. I think it's excellent because as a full-time working person, it just makes my schedule more available.
Childress offers weeknight and Saturday classes to accommodate your work schedule.
Most people have to work every day, all day long, and this would definitely make it a lot easier for them to be able to come up here.
It's nice to come home and change into my pajamas and crawl in bed and watch my videos, you know.
I highly recommend the hybrid program. I think it's fantastic and it'll accommodate many schedules.
Childress Hybrid adapts to your busy lifestyle and allows you to experience the best of both Childress online and on campus. Learn more at charisbiblecollege.org/hybrid.
I want to let you know that we are doing what we call a live Bible study every Tuesday night at 6 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. We are broadcasting from our facilities here in Woodland Park, and we are just sharing the Word, and it's actually live. You can text in your questions, you can call and ask for prayer, but we will answer as many of your questions as we can. About 25-30 minutes worth of teaching and maybe 25 minutes worth of answering questions. It's just a great interactive thing every Tuesday night, 6 o'clock p.m. Mountain Standard Time.
Meet the Joneses. They made a commitment to get up early every morning and watch The Gospel Truth with Andrew Womack on TV. Only problem is, as much as they love Andrew, mornings do not love the Joneses. They wish there was some way they could simply watch Andrew on TV whenever they wanted. With Roku plugged to your TV, you can watch Andrew on demand whenever you want.